Alright guys, so I have 4 examples of some textures here, so we're going to go through the hand texturing process. I found these from different areas around the state, mostly in the Ridge and Valley, Piedmont, and Blue Ridge. So we're just going to take a look at these and see if we can figure out what the texture is. So I have my texture triangle, got my soils, and I got my spray bottle. So right off the bat, I can tell you this soil came from a floodplain. It's very dark, so it's mostly consists of like eroded topsoil that was carried by water and then deposited. So let's see what texture we got. So before I even start, one thing I like to think about when I'm texturing is, does it have more or less than 50% sand? This line right here, the 50% line, is pretty much the breaking point between silt loam and sandy loam. So I think it's a very important distinction to make. Generally speaking, if you can feel sand grains, and I can feel some sand grains in this, I'm not going to call it a silt loam. I'm going to go with a loam or sandier. But we'll do a sand test just to confirm that. So I'm going to start with my ribbon. That's the key fob motion. And I'm getting these little pieces here. Now you don't want to help the soil stay together. You want to let it break where it's going to fall. This is about an inch or less. So since it's about an inch or less, we say that 1 inch equals 10% clay. We're somewhere below this line. Seeing as all the sand I feel in this, I'm pretty sure we're going to be somewhere over here. So let's do our sand test. I'm going to make 2 peas of equal size. Roughly. And these are pretty big, but I just want to make sure you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to put one to the side. I can feel just sand grains sticking to my hand. I'm going to spread it out. I'm going to wet it. So you have to be very careful. Only the silt and the clay is going to go into the water. So you want to kind of break that up. Let me make sure I don't contaminate my other samples here. Cup it in your hand, keep wetting it. And you let it drain off. Oh. Keep rubbing it, keep rubbing it. And we'll fast forward to when this is finished here. Alright, that's pretty close. So I'm going to take that pile, get all that extra water off that I can. I'm going to compare that now to the original. So by volume, well, you can see that. I'm going to go with, that's probably 60%. So I know it's about 10% clay, 60% sand. That means we're at 30% silt. So we'll go 60% sand, 10% clay, 30% silt. That gets us here at a sandy loam. And if you guys remember, the way to tell a difference also between a sandy loam and a loamy sand, because you might touch this and you immediately think, wow, this is like very, very sandy. If you can throw it and catch it and it stays in a ball, you're in a sandy loam. Okay. I'm gonna grab a towel real quick. All right, let's try some more. Okay, moving on. This next one, already I can tell this is dramatically different compared to this previous soil. So now I'm thinking, maybe I'm going to be in a different part of the triangle this time. I'm going to start with my ribbon. We're going to ribbon it out. All right, that's a pretty long ribbon. If you're at, greater than 3 inches, I think it's pretty safe to say you're in the clay category. I think we should go with clay for this one too. One thing I like to do is the shine test. Do a little smear. If that shines, you know you have greater than 35% clay, which we do. I do feel a few sand grains in here. So maybe if this was a little bit less clayey, I'd consider calling it a clay loam. That means it would have, anywhere between 20 and maybe 45% sand. I think this guy's gonna be a clay. Can I see my fingerprint? I can see my fingerprint pretty well. If you squeeze it, do the ridges stay in it? Yeah. We'll go with the clay for that one. On the same page, this one right here, I'm not even gonna do anything with it because I can feel how tight this is. Some people want to say that clay is sticky. It's not. That's a silt characteristic. Clay is going to stick to itself, actually. So when it feels very tight, that's a clay. I can clearly see my fingerprint in there. This is a little bit dry at this point. When I go to do the streak test, it's very shiny. So this is also a clay. Then we have one more right here. So this one's not as tight. It's definitely looser. So let's see how it textures out. I'm gonna wet it up a little bit. I feel a few sand grains in here. This is an example of one that you think is going to ribbon out a lot farther than it actually does, but we're probably about 20 to 35%, I'm gonna say. So when I get a soil like that, I want to do my streak test. All right, so probably at about 35% clay. And I feel the sand in here. So let's do a sand wash to see how much is in it. Okay, I think I lost a few fine sand grains in here just because they are, you know, really delicate. But I'm gonna go with at least 20% or more sand in here. So I know I have 35% clay, let's call it 25% sand, that's 60%, 40% silt at that point, and that's gonna put us right here in a clay loam. All right, so we have here a modified soil profile that I got in Shenandoah County. So we're going to talk about horizonation, and when I say that, I mean, you know, how do we figure out where those soil horizons end? So we base this off of three things. That's color, texture, and structure. Soil color is something we use the Munsell color book. And the way that we interpret this, so we have a hue, a value, and a chroma. So our hue is going to be the color itself. You know, is it red? Is it yellow? And that has this funky notation here. 10YR means 10 parts yellow to 1 part red. So 5YR, you know, it's just 5 parts yellow. 5YR, it's 5 parts yellow to 1 part red. So it's less yellow to more red. And then, you know, 10R is very, very red. You might not think pink soils exist, but they do. You know, they're in Africa, but it's actual a color. So the Munsell notation system exists for, you know, many, many different types of colors, but the soil books are made specifically for soils. And that's why it's limited. Hey everybody, I realized I also forgot to explain value and chroma. So here is the color book on the 10YR hue page. So value is on the left. You go from a high number to a low number, and that is your lightness and darkness. So as you decrease, it gets darker. And then chroma is saturation. So you start with a very low saturation, a low number, and as you increase that color intensity, it becomes higher. So when we see a soil profile, the first thing we want to see is, like, you know, where does the color change? We can break our horizon on that. That's not always useful. Sometimes the color doesn't change that much, like compared to these two. So we have to use other tools to help us. So we go from color to texture, which we just showed you guys how to determine the soil texture. So if you can find major changes in clay content, sand content, that'll really help you break that horizon. And then here is a very good example of structure. So this was taken from the topsoil. As you can see, we have some nice granular structure. That is due to these roots. As you can see here, there's little granules clinging on to the roots of this plant. That's kind of what makes that nice granular structure. And then we move into something that's more of like an E horizon, which is a little bit weaker. So it has more structure here, but it's very weak. This is very weak structure because it's low in clay, high in sand, you know. The soil's never been plowed, so that's why we actually have an E horizon present. Typically that gets plowed into the topsoil, and you might never see this. It's a little bit lighter in color. And then we're going deeper into the subsoil, and here you can see the structure really picks up. So we have some subangular blocks. And then below that, you know, this is also deeper in the profile, maybe at about 3 or so feet. This is where the clay really picks up, and you get these very strong subangular blocks. One thing you can note here, and it's kind of hard to see, so let me get my spray bottle. When we talk about soil color, there's the matrix color. That's the overall color of the soil. But then we also have things called lithochromic colors, which might be due to the parent material, or there's colors that are due to wetness, which we call redoxomorphic features. So while these might seem very similar, and hopefully you can see this, within this soil here, we have some lithochromic colors, so litho, you know, rock colors. That had to do with some weathering of, I believe there is a lot of siltstone. What's the word I'm looking for? Oh, shale. There's a lot of shale in here, which is lighter in color. So you can see little like pieces of weathered shale in that profile. So color, texture, and structure. That's how we break our horizons. Now over here, you guys can see, does that look pretty clear? Maybe you want to stand in front of it. Can you see the colors?
Yeah.
Okay. So here we have a soil profile that was taken out and put into this monolith. You can see the granular topsoil as that goes into the subsoil, and as we increase in depth, that structure becomes a lot stronger. So this isn't something you might see, so don't panic. All you need to do is remember color, texture, and structure. Try to find where those changes occur, and you'll be good to go.